From auction floor reject to town hero, how one traumatized dog found his purpose again and helped an entire community heal. The air outside the Charleston Heritage Hall was heavy with the scent of salt and honeysuckle. A warm autumn breeze rustled the hanging moss of the old oaks that lined the cobbled streets, their shadows long beneath the setting sun. Inside, however, the air was crisp and chilled, preserved by air conditioning and perfumed by old money. Crystal chandeliers bathed the auction room in a golden glow, casting a sheen over velvet-covered chairs, fine jewelry, and curated antiques. Guests in suits and silk gowns sipped champagne, murmuring over-numbered paddles while a string quartet played in the corner like background actors in a movie that wasn't quite real. But the illusion broke at the foot of the auctioneer's podium. There, on the polished marble floor, like a misplaced broom in a gallery of glass, lay a German shepherd. He was thin, his ribs visible even beneath his fading black and tan coat. Scars, some fresh and others long-healed, marred his flanks. His ears were down, one slightly torn at the tip. He did not whine. He did not beg. He simply lay still, eyes half-lidded, unmoved by the bustling crowd above. The tag tied hastily to his collar read, Lot 74, donation, military canine, retired, special item, non-catalogued. The auctioneer, a wiry man named Jasper Hill with a sharp tuxedo and sharper panic in his eyes, cleared his throat for the third time. Ladies and gentlemen, next up we have a rather unique entry generously donated to our cause. He looked down nervously. A retired service dog. No starting bid required. Proceeds to go toward the Veterans Outreach Program. Murmurs filled the air like mosquitoes at dusk. From a corner, a flash went off. The dog flinched. Only slightly, but it was enough. Ellie Monroe, mid-30s, tall, with curly red hair pinned into a messy bun, lowered her camera and frowned. She was not dressed like the others. No evening gown, just a blazer, jeans, and worn boots. A local journalist for the Charleston Current, Ellie was there to cover the elite charity event. She hadn't expected a dog on the auction block. She hadn't expected that reaction either. A man in a double-breasted white blazer raised his paddle, smirking. I'll give $500 for the adorable little war hero. Laughter broke like a wave through the hall. The dog did not move. Then, from the far left row, a chair scraped against the floor. A man rose slowly, paddle in hand. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with a strong frame softened only slightly by age. His hair was steel gray, tied back loosely, and his beard was salt and peppered. He wore a dark flannel shirt beneath a blazer and worn boots, underdressed but not unsure. His name was Owen Chambers, 61 years old, former Charleston firefighter, and the sort of man who rarely spoke unless silence demanded interruption. He didn't smile. He didn't smirk. I'll take him, he said, voice gravel and smoke, as if it had once carried through burning buildings. Silence swept the room like an extinguished flame. Ellie's camera clicked again, but her eyes stayed on the dog. Owen walked forward as Jasper, the auctioneer, blinked. Sir, are you sure? Owen didn't answer. He crouched slowly beside the dog. The German shepherd didn't growl or flinch, only open one eye, dulled by trauma or fatigue. What's his name? Jasper, the auctioneer, shrugged, suddenly sheepish. They didn't say. Came with the lot from a government clearance. No papers. He's just there. Owen's eyes didn't leave the dog. Not anymore. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out $200 in cash, pressing it into the auctioneer's hand. Let's not embarrass ourselves with a bid. Ellie lowered her camera. Something in the dog's posture had changed. Only slightly, but it was enough. His head lifted just an inch. Enough to see Owen. Enough to see that someone, for the first time in God knows how long, had chosen him without a laugh. As the room murmured again, this time quieter, Owen took the frayed leash and gently tugged. The dog rose slowly, stiffly, his limbs hesitant but functional. And for the first time that evening, someone clapped. It was Ellie. Just once. Then twice. A slow, deliberate rhythm that others joined, some awkwardly, unsure why but sensing they should. Outside, the sky had turned lavender. Owen and the dog walked through the grand, arched doors and out onto the marble steps without a backward glance. The crowd parted, as if uncertain whether to pity or admire them. Back inside, Ellie flipped open her notebook. She wrote one line. Flash made him flinch. PTSD? Story here. Find his past. Then, she packed up her gear, left the glitz behind, and stepped into the warm Charleston night. The dog, still unnamed, was already looking back at her. Just for a second, but it was enough. The morning light broke gently over the rolling outskirts of Charleston. Owen Chambers' modest farm sat on the edge of nowhere in memory, tucked between a crumbling fence line and the silhouette of woods thick with pine and sweet gum. The sky was overcast, diffusing the sunlight like a whispered apology, and the grass held the hush of early dew. In the barn, the old wooden beams creaked softly as if still stretching from the night. On a pile of clean straw lay the German shepherd. He was curled tightly, nose to tail, ribs rising in shallow rhythm. Owen had placed 2 bowls near him, water and food, but both remained untouched. Jasper, as Owen had decided to call him, had not barked, nor growled, nor made any sound since arriving. But the silence wasn't calm. It was coiled, watchful. His eyes tracked every movement with suspicion, and every noise, even distant, caused a twitch in his ear or a flinch in his spine. Owen had chosen not to press. Instead, he rolled out an old sleeping bag on the opposite side of the barn and spent the night near the dog, not speaking much, just enough to let his voice exist in the space. They told me a burning ceiling was about to collapse, he murmured once, hands behind his head. And I went in anyway. We pulled out 3 kids. I left part of my hearing in that fire. Guilt stayed with me longer than the smoke did. He spoke into the night, half to himself, half to the creature who hadn't yet accepted he was safe. Outside, the wind ran its fingers through the cornstalks. Somewhere distant, a hawk cried out. Inside, Jasper blinked once, slow and tired. That morning, Owen brewed black coffee on the porch stove and watched the clouds roll in low and gray. The barn door remained ajar. Jasper hadn't left it. When Owen called softly from the porch, the dog didn't come, but he didn't hide either. Later that day, Ellie Monroe's truck kicked up a trail of gravel dust as it pulled into the long driveway. She climbed out with a messenger bag slung across her shoulder and a Nikon still hanging from her neck. Her expression was businesslike, but her eyes held a quiet empathy. Owen greeted her with a nod. Thought you press folks were done with us. I'm not here for the story everyone's already printed, she replied, brushing back a wind-blown curl. I'm here for the one no one knows yet. About that dog. They sat on the porch, Jasper visible in the barn beyond, his eyes fixed but not approaching. Flash from my camera made him flinch, Ellie said. Not like a dog afraid of storms. It was trained fear, and not from war. Owen didn't respond immediately. His gaze drifted toward the barn. I've seen fire victims look like that, he finally said. Not just burned. Hollow, like they left something behind in the flames. Ellie opened her bag and pulled out a folder. I started digging. I have a few contacts in the animal rescue circuit. Got this. She spread out a crumpled intake form, partially redacted. He wasn't adopted through a vet hospital or shelter. He was decommissioned from a private contractor. Owen's brow furrowed. Military? Not exactly. Hightower K-9 Security Solutions. They're technically civilian, work border contracts, private security, even some offshore installations. But they recruit retired military dogs, retrain them aggressively. How aggressive? Ellie didn't speak right away. Then, quietly, there were allegations. Investigations. All sealed. One handler disappeared. A whistleblower claimed dogs were drugged, shocked, even locked in blacked-out rooms for obedience stress testing. And then everything got buried. Owen exhaled slowly, then looked toward the barn. Jasper had shifted positions. His eyes weren't just watchful now, they were locked onto Ellie. You think he came from that? I think, she said, lowering her voice. They tried to erase him. That afternoon, Owen tried again to coax Jasper out. He left strips of roast chicken, not kibble. Still nothing. But when he sat on the barn floor and placed the pieces near his feet, Jasper inched closer. One paw, then another. He didn't eat in front of Owen, but once Owen turned away, he heard the quiet crunch behind him. That night, the wind picked up, carrying a low thunder from a sea. Somewhere down the coast, a storm brewed. The air turned humid, almost electric. Jasper paced in a barn, eyes wide, body low, every bone tense as a live wire. Owen stepped in slowly, no sudden moves. "You all right, boy?" he asked, kneeling low. Jasper's breath came fast. The creak of a wind-blown shutter made him bolt, crashing into a feed bucket, sending it skidding. He didn't attack. He didn't growl. He just trembled, like a prisoner waiting for the door to open again. Owen sat on the straw-covered floor and leaned back against the beam. "I don't know what they did to you," he said softly, "but I'm not them, and you don't have to remember it all at once. You could take your time." Jasper slowly lowered himself beside the far wall, still watching, but he didn't look away. That evening, after she returned to town, Ellie met up with an old friend, Marissa Clark, a sharp-eyed, fast-talking vet tech who worked part-time at the Charleston Animal Trauma Unit. Marissa was short, wiry, with tattoos peeking from under her scrubs and a near-photographic memory for intake forms. "I know that look," she said, studying the photo Ellie had taken of Jasper. "That's not just PTSD. That's conditioned response, flashbangs, shock association, classic trigger-reinforced punishment cycles. Military doesn't use that. Private firms do. Bastards call it optimization." Marissa leaned forward. "You want records?" Hightower blacked out everything after 2021. "But I remember a dog like him. Came in one night, jaw dislocated, too afraid to bark. Didn't even try to bite back." Ellie wrote it all down. The storm rolled in just after dusk, fast and loud, like a freight train hurtling through the sky. Charleston's humid air thickened, and the fields outside Owen's farm turned dark and heavy with the scent of ozone. The crickets fell quiet. A single crack of lightning split the clouds above, and a deep rumble followed, low and long, like an ancient growl. Inside the barn, Jasper's body stiffened before the thunder even struck. His ears flattened, tail tucked, breath short and rapid. Owen noticed the shift immediately. He had seen it before, in the eyes of smoke-blackened fire victims just before the ceiling gave way. "Easy now," he said quietly from a stool near the wall, setting down his mug of coffee. "It's just weather." But Jasper didn't hear him. Or if he did, it didn't matter. The next bolt lit up the sky like a prison yard searchlight, and the thunder cracked again, this time closer. Jasper lunged toward the open stall gate, claws scraping wood, eyes wide and vacant. "Jasper!" Owen stood up fast, but the dog was gone, bolting past the feed sacks and out into the rain. Owen grabbed his flashlight, didn't bother with a coat, and ran. The wind whipped across the open pasture, flattening grass in waves. The rain was hard and cold now, slashing through his shirt as he jogged along the tree line, calling Jasper's name. "Jasper, it's me. Come back, boy." Nothing but the wind and the whisper of thunder in retreat. He moved into the woods, low branches, soaked leaves, thick mud sucking at his boots. He stopped off and listening. A flash of movement ahead. He turned his light toward it. At the edge of the marsh, he found him. Jasper was curled near a cypress root, his body low, legs trembling, as if bracing for something worse than rain. His eyes were open but far away, locked on some memory Owen couldn't reach. The water lapped quietly beside him. The trees above swayed and moaned. Owen approached slowly, lowered himself onto the wet ground without a word. He didn't reach out. He didn't push. He just sat. The rain ran down his neck, pooled in his sleeves. He let it. Time passed in strange ways in the storm. Minutes felt like hours, or maybe it was the other way around. When he finally spoke, his voice was almost a murmur. "I remember my first fire," he said. "Rookie year. We were just checking smoke reports. I thought it'd be nothing." He stared out over the marsh. Jasper didn't move. But it wasn't nothing. It was a kitchen explosion, gas line. Roof came down in under a minute. I froze. Just like you. Couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. One of the kids we pulled out later didn't make it. The thunder had softened now, drifting toward the coast. The rain still fell, but slower. Quieter. I ran too after that. Not with my legs up here. He tapped his temple gently. And you know what? Running didn't fix it, just made the shadows darker. He looked at Jasper. We can't live forever in the dark, boy. It'll eat us whole. Jasper didn't answer. Of course he didn't. But something in his body, just a little, unlocked. The tension in his back softened. He blinked once. When dawn finally cracked the sky into pale, orange pieces, Owen's body was stiff, soaked to the bone. His fingers had gone numb. But Jasper moved. Slowly, cautiously, the dog rose to his feet and walked forward. Not quickly, not confidently, but deliberately. He stopped beside Owen, lowered his head, and touched his nose to the back of Owen's hand. That single moment, quiet and small, was louder than any thunder the night had thrown at them. Back in town, Ellie Monroe sat hunched at her desk in the Charleston Current's archive office, eyes locked on a pixelated screen. The storm outside had knocked out power earlier, but now the backup generators hummed softly. She had been digging all night. Old whistleblower reports, scrubbed intake forms, deleted footage from abandoned drives. But this was something new. She clicked the file. A static-filled video, timestamped 10:14 p.m., March 9th, 2 years ago. The image wobbled. A dimly lit room. No windows. A single fluorescent flickering above. A dog. A German shepherd. Collar high, ribs sharp, chained to a bolt in the floor. Audio was faint, but there was a pulsing hum, rhythmic, rising in pitch. Jasper. The same torn ear. The same scar along the flank. He was pacing, erratic, panicked. The hum grew louder. Then a bright flash, like a strobe light, and Jasper collapsed, whining soundlessly, writhing on the floor. Ellie stared at the screen, heart pounding. This wasn't training. This was torture. Sonic weapons designed for riot control, used on a working dog. She copied the file onto her encrypted drive, hands shaking. The logo in the bottom corner read, Hightower K9, Behavioral Calibration Unit 3. They had hidden this, but not well enough. Later that evening, back at the farm, Owen and Jasper sat together on the porch. A blanket covered the dog's back. His fur was still damp, but his breathing was slow. Even, Ellie arrived without calling. She parked quietly, walked up with that storm-worn leather bag and determination in her step. I found something, she said. I need to show you. Owen led her inside, while Jasper watched from the doorway. She set up her laptop, clicked the file. Owen's jaw tensed. His fist curled unconsciously. That's him. Ellie nodded. They used flash and audio punishment to condition submission. That's why he bolts at thunder, at light. Owen said nothing for a long time. Then he asked, how do we prove this? Ellie looked at him with grim resolve. We start digging deeper, and we don't stop. The evening air was thick with the scent of wet pine and distant tobacco smoke as Charleston slipped into dusk. The storm had passed, but its tension lingered, coiled in the leaves, hovering on the skin. Owen sat on the porch beside Jasper, who now dozed at his feet, chin resting on crossed paws. There was a subtle ease to the way the dog breathed now, a fragile trust beginning to settle like dust after a long chase. Inside the house, Ellie stared at her phone. The screen glowed in the dark room. One message. No sender. No timestamp. Just a sentence. Stop digging, or you'll end up buried next to him. Her fingers hovered over the screen before locking the phone. The message had come just hours after she published an encrypted teaser about Hightower K9 on an investigative subreddit. The post hadn't mentioned names, but clearly someone was watching. She turned toward Owen, who was now gently scratching behind Jasper's ear. We need to talk, she said. Within minutes, they were seated at the worn kitchen table. A single overhead bulb hummed softly. I got this earlier today. She passed the phone over. Owen read the message, his jaw clenching ever so slightly. You think it's Wexley? He asked. I don't know yet, Ellie said. But the footage I pulled, there's a connection. I traced the security server logs from that facility. Guess whose name keeps showing up in back-end admin access? She opened her laptop and pulled up a name. Carlton Wexley. Owen leaned back in his chair. I've heard that name. Wasn't he? He ran the Hightower East Division, Ellie confirmed. Technically retired after internal review, but no charges stuck. He disappeared for a while. But he's back. Registered a new facility in West Texas 2 months ago. Different name, same methods. All the online references to Jasper's unit have been wiped. Owen tapped a thick finger against the table. Then he knows Jasper's alive. Just as he spoke, Jasper, who had been resting, suddenly stood up, growling low at the back door. Owen moved silently, motioning Ellie to stay back. He stepped outside, flashlight in hand. The barn door was ajar. He approached slowly, boots crunching gravel. Inside, hay had been disturbed. A broken latch lay near the side entrance. Someone had been here. He didn't need confirmation. The muddy boot prints said enough. The next morning, they packed up early. "We're taking him to someone," Owen said, loading Jasper gently into the back of his truck, the bed lined with worn blankets. "If we want answers, we go to someone who used to build monsters like Wexley. Someone who left it behind." The drive led them 3 hours north, into the foothills of Sumner County, where tree branches clawed at the truck windows like brittle fingers. The vet clinic didn't look like much, just a converted farmhouse with a rusting wind vane and a mailbox that read, "Dr. Raymond Knox." Dr. Knox emerged from the side porch before they even knocked. He was in his late 50s, with thinning auburn hair and sharp brown eyes set beneath heavy brows. He wore a faded army jacket over slacks and boots caked in old clay. He moved slowly but deliberately, with the weight of someone who had seen more than he wanted to. "I was told not to expect visitors," he said, voice gravelly but not unkind. "But then again, most good things aren't expected. We're here about a dog," Owen said. Knox glanced at the truck, and his eyes landed on Jasper. The dog watched him warily, body still but alert. "Bring him inside." Inside, the clinic was neat but minimal. Old textbooks lined the walls. Framed photos of military dogs in action sat beside a dusty bronze star. Jasper lay on the examination table, still silent as Knox ran his hands gently over the dog's frame. He paused at the scar behind Jasper's left shoulder. "This pattern," he murmured. "Electric contact points. Not accidental. And this." He indicated a small, nearly invisible notch behind Jasper's right ear. "Subdermal audio trigger implant. Most clients don't even know it's there." He looked at Ellie. "Where did you find this one?" "He was dumped at a charity auction," she replied. "They tried to pass him off as retired military surplus. No papers. No chip." Knox nodded solemnly. "Because he was never meant to leave. Wexley's dogs aren't trained. They're broken. Pain response conditioning, strobe-induced panic resets, frequency isolation chambers. I tried to change things when I worked under him. Filed reports. Got ignored. I left before I became part of it." Ellie leaned forward. "Can you prove this?" Knox walked to an old filing cabinet, unlocked it, and pulled out a folder marked Project Meridian. "Wexley's pilot program," he said, "back before everything went underground. I kept copies. I've been waiting for someone to do something with them." Inside the folder were charts, signatures, implant records, and, among them, an intake photo of a young German shepherd, clear-eyed and strong. Label: Unit 6, Jasper. That evening, Ellie sat in her car, just beyond the clinic's gravel lot, composing her notes while Owen rested under the oak tree, Jasper at his feet. She checked her messages again. A new one, this time from an encrypted contact she hadn't used in months. "Wexley's prepping a cleanup. You're in his scope. You and the dog." She stared at the screen, then at Jasper. "We're running out of time," she whispered. Charleston's golden light softened the town square as autumn deepened. Colorful banners waved from iron lampposts, and folding chairs lined the lawn for the annual Harbor Haven Wellness Festival, an event meant to uplift veterans, first responders, and trauma survivors with music, food, and shared stories. The theme this year, the long walk home, recovery beyond the uniform. Owen Chambers stood near the event tent, arms crossed over his chest, gaze scanning the small crowd forming around the main stage. He wore a navy utility jacket, worn jeans, and a quiet expression that betrayed neither nerves nor pride. Beside him sat Jasper, leashed but calm, his ears twitching at the distant hum of speakers being tested. It was a risk bringing him. Owen had argued with himself all week. Crowds, loud sounds, children, each a trigger for a dog conditioned to survive pain and follow orders under duress. But Dr. Knox's words rang in his head. Let him choose. Trust doesn't grow in the dark. So Owen brought him, not as a showpiece, not as a message, but as a partner. Jasper had earned that right. Volunteers bustled around them. A young woman with a clipboard approached. Leah Bryant, short and bright-eyed, wearing a festival tee a size too big. She had a soft spot for dogs and wore it like a badge. "Mr. Chambers?" she asked, glancing at Jasper. "They're ready for you in about 15. You'll be introduced by Mayor Callan. Just a few remarks on your service and your recovery journey." Owen nodded. "Thanks, ma'am." She bent to Jasper, offered a hand. Jasper sniffed it, but didn't retreat. She smiled. "He's beautiful," she said. "You'd never guess what he's been through." "You'd be surprised," Owen replied. "He's taught me more about recovery than any therapist I've ever had." Meanwhile, across town, Ellie Monroe walked into the small law office of Mason and Harrow, a boutique firm known for pro bono work in animal welfare litigation. The space smelled of leather and lemon wood polish, and the waiting room was stacked with pamphlets titled Legal Protections for Working Animals. She was met by Rebecca Harrow, a sharply dressed woman in her 40s, tall and composed, with sleek black hair and a presence that made silence feel intentional. Rebecca's voice was measured, precise, and warm only when earned. "I've reviewed your file," she said, motioning Ellie into the glass-walled conference room. "The footage, the intake records, the Knox files. It's damning, but we'll need more." "I'm working on it," Ellie said, "but we can't wait too long. Wexley's facility in Texas is still operational. If we delay, more dogs will vanish." Rebecca nodded. "We'll file a civil injunction on Monday. Emergency motion based on animal cruelty and violation of post-service rights for working dogs. But we'll need one more piece of evidence, a testimony from someone who trained under him. Someone still alive." Ellie hesitated. "That's harder. Everyone's either disappeared or too afraid. Then we find the one who isn't." Back at the festival, Owen stood just off stage, listening as Mayor Rachel Callan, a silver-haired woman in a crimson pantsuit with the calm authority of a judge, introduced him to the crowd. Owen took the mic slowly. The square was fuller now. Local families, veterans, nurses, even school kids gathered on picnic blankets. "I'm not a speaker," he began, his voice steady but unpolished. "I'm a man who's been through fire, literally and not. I thought I made peace with it. Turns out, peace doesn't come when you shut the door. It comes when you let someone in." He glanced down at Jasper, who lay at his feet like a soldier off duty. This dog didn't just survive something awful. He chose to live, not because someone forced him to, but because someone let him. The applause was modest at first, respectful. Then someone from the back, likely a vet with a canine past, rose to clap harder. Others followed, a slow ripple, genuine. The next moment changed everything. A child, Jamie Wells, a 6-year-old boy with glasses and a quick laugh, had wriggled free from his mother's grasp near the edge of the platform. He was bouncing on the wooden stage behind the speaker's tent when one of the plywood panels gave way with a loud crack. The boy stumbled. One foot slipped off the edge, arms flailing toward the gap. Jasper moved before anyone else did. No bark, no growl, just a fluid blur of motion. He leapt onto the stage, grabbed the child's shirt collar gently in his jaws, and pulled him back onto the solid planks, just as the broken edge gave way completely. Gasps filled the square. Then applause. Then a cheer. Cameras flashed. Phones were raised. A local news crew caught the final seconds of it. The moment Jasper turned toward the crowd, ears alert, tail not tucked, eyes steady. Not broken. Not afraid. A boy was safe. A crowd stood in awe. And a dog that had once been discarded like war-torn debris stood center stage, whole. That evening, Owen sat beneath a willow tree on the edge of the square. Jasper curled beside him in the grass. The chaos had ebbed. Reporters had left. Children had gone home. But peace in its quiet way had remained. Ellie arrived and sat beside them, laptop bag slung over one shoulder. "You saw it?" Owen asked. She nodded. "Front page by morning." He didn't smile, but his eyes softened. I gave the files to a legal team, she added. They're going after Wexley. Civil suit at first. Injunctions. The works. You think it'll stick? I think today gave us momentum, she said, nodding toward Jasper. You don't come back from something like that and not change people. Jasper shifted slightly, resting his chin on Owen's boot. Owen reached down and scratched behind his ear. Yeah, he said softly. He's got that way about him. The nights had turned cooler now, tinged with the scent of turning leaves and pine smoke curling from chimneys. Owen Chambers' cabin, nestled at the edge of the woods beyond Charleston, had changed in subtle ways. The porch, once weather-worn and silent, now bore the signs of quiet life. An extra chair always pulled out, a second coffee mug resting beside Owen's, and most notably, a blanket-lined spot where Jasper liked to nap in the late afternoon sun. He was there now, curled comfortably in the space between the two wooden chairs, his body relaxed in a way that had once seemed impossible. The deep rise and fall of his breathing matched the rhythm of the rocking chairs above him, one occupied by Owen, the other by Ellie Monroe. Inside the cabin, the scent of fresh varnish still lingered. It wasn't just a home anymore. It had become something more. Every Thursday evening, veterans and former first responders gathered in the converted den, a space Owen now called the quiet room. The walls bore no medals or photos, just soft lights, thick rugs, and wide windows that looked out over the field. Jasper always waited by the door when the meetings began, watching each man or woman walk in. Some were young and tight-jawed, others gray and hollow-eyed. Some came alone. Some came with dogs. Paul Mendez, a former firefighter in his 50s with a limp and a history of silence, had been the first to truly bond with Jasper. Paul was tall, with olive skin and thick salt and pepper hair, rarely speaking more than 2 words at a time. But when Jasper sat beside him that first night, Paul's eyes softened for the first time in years. He gets it, Paul muttered. That dog, he gets it. Owen remembered that moment vividly, because it was the first time Paul had said anything in group. Other members followed. Donna Ray, a soft-spoken paramedic whose hands still trembled when she drove past accident scenes. Sergeant Billy Crowder, tall and lanky with knuckles perpetually clenched, sat with his service dog Millie just outside the circle, until Jasper padded over and laid down between them, inviting the others closer. The dog didn't need to speak. He just needed to be there, and somehow that was enough. Ellie documented these moments in photos, not for the press, but for herself. She never published them. Instead, she kept them in a small leather-bound notebook marked Quiet Miracles. The trial against Carlton Wexley had concluded 3 weeks prior. It was quiet, too quiet, some said, but Ellie knew justice rarely shouted. It carved, slowly. Rebecca Harrow had delivered the closing argument with icy precision, pointing to Exhibit B, a 20-minute video featuring Jasper's time in captivity and the evidence from Dr. Knox. Wexley never took the stand. He sat with his attorney, lips pressed into a cold line, eyes hidden behind gold-rimmed glasses. When the ruling came down, it was unanimous. Carlton Wexley's training facility was permanently shut down. He was banned from operating or funding any animal-related organization and fined into near insolvency. But more than that, a legislative ripple followed. Ellie had stood in the back of the South Carolina State House the day Senate Bill 2399 passed, the Canine Rehabilitation and Protection Act. It required psychological evaluations for all working dogs post-service, banned high-pain stimulus conditioning, and ensured access to recovery and adoption networks. Jasper's name wasn't on the bill, but he didn't need it to be. The lawmakers all knew, and so did the people. At the town's fall festival, a statue had been unveiled near the park fountain. A life-size bronze German shepherd, seated in calm posture, eyes forward. Beneath it, the inscription, "To those who served in silence." Now, back on the porch, Jasper stirred as the sun sank lower. The soft hum of a distant harmonica floated from a neighbor's field. Owen reached for his mug, fingers wrapped around the worn ceramic like he'd done 1,000 times. "You ever think we'd end up here?" Ellie asked, voice quiet, almost lost in the breeze. Owen didn't look at her right away. He watched the light shift across the trees instead. "I didn't think we'd end up anywhere," he said. But then again, maybe that was the problem. She nodded slowly. Jasper stretched, rose to his feet, and padded over to rest his head on Owen's knee. A moment later, he shifted slightly and placed his paw across Ellie's foot, like a bridge between them. The porch light flicked on as the evening chill set in, bathing them in a soft golden glow. No one spoke for a long time. There was no need. In the quiet, under the eaves, beneath the yellow light and the weight of things both lost and found, they simply sat, with a dog who had been discarded, then reclaimed, then reborn. Not as a weapon, not as a warning, but as a witness to healing. Sometimes, the ones the world throws away are the very ones who teach us how to heal. Jasper was never just a dog. He was a reminder that brokenness is not the end of the story, and that trust, once shattered, can still be rebuilt with patience, love, and quiet companionship. Maybe you've been through your own fire, or maybe you know someone who has. This story is for them, for the silent warriors, the wounded hearts, and the ones still learning how to come home to themselves. If this story touched something in you, share it with someone who needs a reminder that healing is possible. Leave a comment below and say amen if you believe in second chances, in mercy, and in the quiet grace that can still be found beneath the porch light. Subscribe for more stories like this, and may God bless you and the ones you hold dear.